Ashley?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see all of you this evening. I'm super excited about this panel, all about girl power, female empowerment, and we're going to learn a lot today. So, this panel is called The Leading Ladies of Publishing, right? Women are a dominant force in music today. As songwriters, performers, publishers, executives, and entrepreneurs, they are creating the hits, building successful businesses, and shaking up the culture like never before. This panel of gifted women, you all, will share your experiences in navigating the modern music industry, the savvy choices you made, the tough challenges you've encountered, the valuable lessons you've learned, and the greatest rewards you've earned along the way. So let's get started. Can each of you just briefly introduce yourselves, tell us what your current position is, and how you got started in this industry? Let's start with Ari.
Hi, I'm Ari Gala, A&R manager at Universal Music Publishing. I got started in this industry. I started off as an intern at a PR agency in New York, Marvette Brito. She represented some music clients, but also had some athletes as well. So that was it was actually my first time moving to New York. And then after that, I applied for an internship at Atlantic, which I was selected for. And that turned into an assistant job, then coordinator. And then I left to my current title to UMPG, which I joined about a year and a half ago. That's my story.
Nice, congratulations. Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Drake, Senior Director at Sony ATV Music Publishing on the West Coast. I'm based in the LA office. I got started in music, working at Warner Brothers under Orlando McGee. I worked on Gucci Mane's record, The State versus Roderick Davis, I think when Nicki Minaj was just getting ready to blow, and was booking sessions and working with songwriters, and came across a guy, Mike Will Made It. Developed a relationship with him for many years, and ended up meeting Top Dog and Punch with TDE and Kendrick Lamar, and sort of like started to like stay in the mix, working with different songwriters. And like basically the short version is I stalked Nicole George to when I found out there was an opening at ASCAP for a position in the Rhythm and Soul office. I started stalking Nicole George and sort of hounding her and like showing up at the ASCAP Expo in different places because I really, really just loved working with songwriters. Got the position at ASCAP, moved to New York to work with Nicole, and then moved back to Atlanta. We were able to sign, some of the greatest songwriters, I think, in music. Not even, I won't put a genre behind it, but Kendrick Lamar, Mike Will. We were able to bring Drake over as a team, which was so amazing. And essentially started a bidding war for Mike Will amongst the publishing, amongst the different publishers. And then I got an opportunity to work with Ethiopia Haptimeriam at UMPG. I was there briefly, signed Childish Major there, signed a couple other amazing acts. And then from there, came to Sony Publishing, where I had the pleasure of signing Khalid and Cardi B and Mustard and LMA and Nipsey Hussle. I think was one of the greatest signings that I've had so far, just because I had worked with him for so many years and actually got the contract right before he passed away. And I remember being at the Rock Nation brunch and him telling me, "Look, sis, I'm gonna do it. I'm ready to do a pub deal. Let's go." And I think like signing him and looking after his catalog is definitely like a highlight of my career. So I just love working with songwriters, and developing them is definitely like one of my passions. So I'm just super happy to be here. Thank you, Nicole, and to the ASCAP team for having us.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. Brandra, last but certainly not least.
So I actually got my start in the music business by interning, probably like the rest of us. Originally, I'm from St. Louis, and so at the time, Nelly was probably the biggest thing that was going on. And so I was in college at the time studying in music business. So I remember one summer I ended up going back home, always wanting to like find that connection with Nelly and like working with his team. So I ended up just making a cold call to the office, calling, trying to get an internship. And it ended up working out. Like I ended up just working with this company for a few years while I was in college in Chicago, later moving on to Universal in New York after I graduated and working at Def Jam. After that, I started getting into publishing. I worked at Universal Music Publishing under Ethiopia Haptemariam, which I got a chance to work with some of the world's best songwriters and producers and artists. And so I kind of got my start in publishing that way. But just backtracking just a little bit, I managed a couple of writers in college. And so I've always kind of felt like songwriting was where it is. People don't really recognize the talent that lies underneath, like people don't see the songwriters and producers as the main thing. So I always kind of like got off on working with the people who actually create the music. Some of the people I worked with at Universal Publishing was Metro Boomin, Cardo, Goldie, Sebastian Cole, and a ton of other songwriters and producers. And I also signed Lil Yachty while I was there. And Quavo I didn't sign Quavo, but I ended up working with him because I was working with Ethiopia at the time and placed a couple of records. Later, I moved to Warner Chappell, where I worked with Ryan Press, and I've signed a lot of producers and songwriters as well. Recently, I signed Squeeze, who produced the box for Roddy Ricch, which was 11. It was number one at Hot 100 for 11 consecutive weeks. So it's one of my proudest moments of the year. I also work with a lot of the eardrummers like 30 Rock Plus, Mars, J-Bo, all of those guys. And I also signed Digi, who works closely with Khalid. He did Love Lies for Normani, Better for Khalid. And a host more, like the list goes on. I have an incredible roster. I'm grateful to work with the team that I work with. But yeah, like and recently I signed quite a few more writers and producers that are actually winning awards this year, which is really exciting.
That's awesome. Awesome. You
You
ladies
stole
are
that
amazing.
squeeze deal from me, Brandra, but it couldn't have gone to a better woman.
Thanks, Jen. Signing that deal was like, I think I have a few gray hairs.
No, listen, that was a deal, by the way. That was congratulations.
Thank you.
All friendly competition. Jen, so you added Cardi B, our Songwriter of the Year for the second year in a row, to the Sony ATV roster. Cardi is continuously breaking records and shifting the narrative of what it means to be a woman in this industry. What has her success taught you?
That's such a great question. I think, I was just like a Cardi B fan before, I got in the mix on trying to pursue her on the publishing side. I was just, a fan. Like I would go to her Instagram page at like 3 a.m, when I couldn't sleep. And I just like loved watching her and just enjoyed it so much. I would have conversations about her, kind of became obsessed with her, and just her story is so inspiring to me because she really knew what she wanted to do and she did it, and she didn't let any of the naysay or the criticism or she just persevered through so many obstacles and barriers, and I find that so admirable. I think she's her own woman. She doesn't apologize for who she is. She's very honest, and I think that one thing that we can all say in this business is like honesty is something that people really can understand and grab onto and relate to, and it's the truth, and people want to hear the truth, and I think fans do, consumers, and I think that I just admire her ability to persevere. She's been through a lot, and she talks about it, and she's honest, and as women we're multifaceted, and I think you can't box her in, and I love that. I love it. I'm here for all of it.
I'm here for all of it too. I think we can all learn something from her. Like she's just so She's a free spirit. She does not care. She
Yeah,
speaks her mind. She makes sure that her voice is heard. I think there's so many lessons to be learned from Cardi, for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ari, so you're responsible for signing the baby to UMPG. Shook is the top R&B hip hop song at this year's ASCAP R&S Awards. We're so excited.
Mhm.
And Rockstar just hit #1 on the Hot 100. Congratulations to you. How do you
Thank
know
you.
your song is going to be a hit?
Oh man, I mean, I think nowadays it's like sometimes I'm surprised. It's like you never really know. I think uh, though some songs, I think once you hear it and it instantly gets stuck in your head, or there's a melody or lyrics or something that just sticks with you. I think you just know. So I think that kind of just is instinct. But yeah, I mean, some songs you feel like, oh, this is going to be the single, and then you find out like the fans gravitate to another record when it comes out of the blue. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you know, and sometimes it surprises you.
That's right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brandra, how much of A&R do you think is instinct and how much is metrics, actual data?
It's interesting that you asked that because, you know, Jen, we actually had this debate on one of the panels we did recently. I would love to say that A&R is 90%, but in the climate that we're in, I think that we all face challenges of having to pay attention to the statistics of records, and so we find ourselves looking at a lot of data on a daily basis, probably more than we would probably admit. It may be 50-50. And at this point with streaming is data within itself. So it's just automatic. You know, when we're talking about music, we're automatically talking about numbers. So you have to pay close attention to numbers that are streaming. You have to pay close attention to how people are reacting to them, and how people react to them really is indicated through the streams and through the views that we all see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this question is for everyone. What do you look for when seeking or signing new talent? And other than talent, what other skills do you think a writer and artist should possess to be successful?
Work ethic is key for me. A lot of times I meet a lot of incredibly talented songwriters, artists, producers, and if they don't have that work ethic, I mean, you can meet someone that has a talent level at a 2 out of 10, but if they have the work ethic, they can easily beat the person that's coming in with a natural skill set that has an 8 out of 10. So I think it's really important that you pay attention to the work ethic when you're looking to sign people, or just courting in general, no matter what type of talent it is. I think just talent in the workplace and life, work ethics go a long way.
I agree.
I totally agree with that too. I think that work ethic is definitely important, to piggyback off of what Brandra said. Also, I think as a publisher, you know, one of the things that I'm always interested in is someone who is, you know, plays instruments, who writes songs, who can reference, who, you know, they have many ways to diversify their catalog and ways to incorporate them into, you know, rooms where they're creating records. So, for example, if you produce and write, you know, and there's a session that's going on that has, you know, a top liner in it already, then, you know, it's possible to throw you in as a co-producer. So just, you know, being able to, like, people who are really skilled and can diversify their craft, and we can utilize that in many ways.
For sure, I agree. Work ethic, I think, is number one. You never want to out hustle the people you're working for. You want it to be a journey that you guys are taking together, and you're both working just as hard as equally. But also for me, I think the team is super important that's surrounding the artist, the producer, the songwriter as well. Like, I want them to hustle just as hard as me. Like at the end of the day, when we sign these people, it is like a marriage. So I want to make sure that we can talk every day, and it's not like, you know, so those are things that I kind of look for too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So can each of you talk to us a little bit about what challenges you faced as a woman in this industry and how you overcame those challenges? if any?
Well, I think just us being women is probably the number one challenge. Us being Black women is the
Right.
number one challenge. Um, Getting the respect that we know that is due to us is first and foremost. And a lot of times it takes having to meet a person 5 times in the music business for them to recognize who you are, for them to not assume that you're in the studio at 2 in the morning because you're an executive versus being a groupie. You know, I've heard a couple people say that, like, oh, it should be a little bit easier, you know, since you're a woman to have these conversations. Yeah, it gets easier after a while, after people know that you're about your business. But when they first meet you, they have this first impression that you're something else. So perception is everything. And so you have to work twice as hard to get your point across and to get the respect that's due.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shannon,
I totally agree with that. I think that, you know, being a woman in this business is challenging, but then also being a Black woman, you're like, you have to work twice as hard. You have to, you know, be in the mix a little bit more, you know. And then there's the element where people will sort of, they'll try you and see, you know, see if you can hold your own and if the respect is there. And you have to, like, as a woman, there's the balance of hard and soft. So you have to be able to maintain that balance of hard and soft where you can put someone in their place, but in a softer way, maybe than a man can. So there's not the total like deterrence of wanting to do deeper business with you. So there's that fine line, but making your voice heard and making sure that you don't back down, you know, it definitely is different.
Yeah, it is for sure. I think especially when you're new to this industry, I think finding your voice and finding your strength is hard, especially when you're surrounded by all males. They're like, you're dealing with egos, personalities. So you're coming in and you're trying to find that balance between all these things. So yeah, you definitely will get tried, and you definitely have to stand your ground and stick up for whatever you believe in. But yeah, I think finding your voice is definitely the most difficult.
That's what I always tell people too, just finding your voice and being comfortable using it, right? Okay, so can each of you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now and what you're excited about?
Oof. For me, like, there's, you know, it's been such an interesting climate with Corona, and you know, we sort of opened up a little bit where sessions were happening, and some people are still doing sessions, and that's fine. But it has presented a little bit of a challenge to, you know, the actual physical session side. But you know, pitching records has definitely become like the new normal, and like really digging into, you know, like when I get a batch of tracks from producers, like Jetson Made is somebody that I work closely with on a regular basis. And so like I get a batch of Jetson Made records, then I'm going through them and I'm looking at sort of who is working, you know, pitching records for like G-Eazy, who's someone who's signed to Sony ATV right now, and he's working on his record. Or Cardi, who is working on her record, which, you know, we're always looking for tracks and hooks for that. Ella May and Mustard are always working. So Ella is getting ready to go back in and work on her record. And, you know, Mustard is super involved in that. So everyone, it's different. So like for Mustard, it might be sending him a really cool loop that I get from a producer, or, you know, getting songwriters to write on tracks that he loves for Ella, or it just varies. But there's so many people actually working right now. It feels really good, you know, it feels good. Or hitting Brandra and being like, hey, we need to pair this writer with this producer, and sort of being like collaborative that way. But just staying, and also, you know, making sure stay in touch with our songwriters and producers right now, because it has to be like a fluid source of communication. You know, there's got to be that fluidity happening. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. Just a few.
Yeah, same here. It's a lot of Zoom producer songwriter sessions. We did a camp through Zoom for Leighton Green at QC. That went really well, surprisingly. I thought everyone was gonna hate it, but it went really well. Yeah, I think too, just staying connected with our songwriters and producer, even just like mentally and physically, like just figuring out where they are mentally too. Like there's a lot happening in the world, so I'm also like super sensitive to seeing even like what are you willing to do? Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't like sometimes we are just on go 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 because that's just the nature of the business. So I think COVID and everything that's happening in the world kind of slowed everything down and was like, hey, like let's figure out what's going on with you mentally. So that's been a change, but it's been a good change.
Absolutely. Brandra, how about you?
I'm trying to think of the things that I can actually speak about.
Oh, no pressure.
But yeah, I was talking to Ari right before this started. We actually put a City Girls camp together with Quality Control at the end of the year. And on their next project, we have a couple of records that, I'm really excited about. And I think that's probably the most exciting thing when it comes to working in publishing, because we get to get dirty and come up with creative ideas and pair people together. And then when you see those songs come to life, like that's like the dream come true, right? And so that's always a cool thing. It's been interesting and it's been cool working in COVID. I out of nowhere, I was just like keeping track of records that I was pitching. I think it's a good time because a lot of A&Rs are actually paying attention, and not that they're not before, but I placed I have like 30 records on hold just since quarantine, right? And in a given scenario, when we're in the office, sometimes we're just so busy. We're going to meetings, we're in traffic that we have some more time that I think that we probably didn't have before. And I think we've all been able to just kind of sit back and digest how we want to spend our time. And I think I can probably speak for all of us. We're probably working smarter now than we were, right? And so I'm going through so many songs that our songwriters have probably written over the last year and maybe a little bit longer. And a lot of those records are being placed, they're being recorded, working on a lot of stuff with QC. That stuff is really personal to me. So I'm always happy to land stuff there. It's a lot of new artists too. Nova Wave, I'm very excited about. They're a writer-producer duo. And they're working on a lot of cool new artists that they just placed a few records with. I don't want to speak on those just yet, but I'm really excited for the things that are coming in the next few months.
Yeah, we recently signed Blue to ASCAP, and so we're excited.
Awesome. I heard. Congrats.
Yeah, so we're excited about what's to come. Each of you touched upon, I think it's interesting, Jen, you said, I'll reach out to Brandra to say we need to work on this. And Brandra, you said, I'll reach out to Ari to say, we need to work on this. So can you talk about, even though you work for what people would consider competing companies, like the importance of supporting each other, right? The importance of still working together and supporting each other. I think that it just spoke volumes to me. And I just want you to elaborate on that a little bit.
I think just being like we've touched on this, being Black women in the music business, it's definitely a situation where you can get caught up in like the competitiveness of it, but also knowing that there's a human side to it where it's like, Brandra and I worked together at Universal for a brief period of time. And one thing that this business is like necessary to have success in this business is relationships, because things are always changing and moving. The CEO at Warner Chappell was John Platt, and now he's the CEO at Sony ATV. And so people are moving around and shifting, and so being able to work with other publishers to get songs cut and get things done or get in on projects they're working on, it only betters your reach as an executive, and it also gives you more value to your creatives because your relationships are solid and you can work across boundaries. We're like Walter Jones. I worked with Walter at ASCAP briefly, and now he's at UMPG, and he's definitely somebody like we collaborated on HER. He reps her, so we had one of my songwriters going on her ink. And there's just always opportunity. I think that especially women and women of color, we have to embrace each other and be open and willing to work together. It's like very necessary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all agree.
Completely agree.
Yes. Okay, so I could ask you guys 10 trillion more questions and sit here and like talk to you all night because you all are amazing and I'm loving this. But we have questions from our listeners, but I just want to ask you one more question before I open it up to the broader questions. What would each of you tell your younger selves? So your younger selves that are just starting out in the industry, very green, like what advice would you give your younger selves, knowing what you know now? Right, Jen, right. So much, so much.
So much.
So much. So much. Seriously, listen. You have like 2 days. It's like, I think, oh gosh. Like, where do you start with that question?
I don't even know.
I definitely think slowing down. Like sometimes, when you're young and you're coming in the business and you're hungry and you're eager to make a name for yourself, sometimes you can step on toes in a way that isn't the best, or like, you're learning, you're filling it out, and communication, like having very fluid communication is so important. And I think that you have to always just be willing to have the hard conversations. You can't shy away from like the tough conversations because it will turn around and bite you in the butt later, So just being like having a real conversation. Like, hey, if you're a young manager and you're shopping a client and you're like, hey, I'm gonna do a deal with you, but really you haven't made the decision and you're meeting with other publishers, and just saying, look, I'm meeting with other publishers. I want to shop this deal. I want to connect with this person. Having those tough conversations will save you a lot of time and energy for sure.
Absolutely.
Not that I think this is the most important, because like you guys said, there's a list of things that I'm sure we all can agree that we probably should have told our younger selves. Work smarter and not harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Women tend to work really, really hard.
Yeah.
And we're nurturers and we want to tend to everyone that we can. But we all work for businesses, and at the end of the day, we have to work hard for people just as hard as they work for themselves. And there's nothing like working harder for someone that doesn't care.
Yeah.
So I would say work. I would say work smarter and not harder.
I love it. I love it. Ari, how about you?
I think for sure be patient. I was very impatient when they came. I wanted everything now and fast. It's taking so long. But I think that this industry has a way of definitely like teaching you patience. Like after a while, you're like, okay, it's gonna happen when it's supposed to happen. I had to learn that. So I was just like, what? Yeah. This is crazy. And like just keep believing. Like don't stop. I think this industry like just brings you through highs and lows emotionally, which is fine, like especially because these are things that we're super passionate about. But especially when you're at that low, when you're just like, I don't know what's going on. Specifically when you're interning and you haven't eaten in 3 days and you're like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Like you question everything. But everything happens for a reason, and it will come in due time as long as you put in the work and stay diligent. So if I could go back in time, I would definitely tell myself like it's going to be okay.
Exactly. Just relax. Everything's going to be fine. Okay, I know I said that was my last question, but I have a few more and then I'll open it up. So can each of you talk to us about the importance of mentorship, in your lives, in your careers, and how, if you've had mentors, how that's helped you kind of sort of progress to where you are today?
Yes.
Sorry, Brandon.
No.
No, I like came to this realization like about, I think as soon as I got to UMP, like mentorship was like, this is gonna sound crazy, but mentorship was a real thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people be like, yeah, this is my mentor. I guess I didn't see the value in mentorship, maybe because I was it was a long story. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, mentorship is like real. You need mentors to help you navigate this industry. I was so gung ho on like running full speed, and I was willing to crash into the wall and be like, all right, as soon as that happens, I'm like, okay, all right, let me readjust and start over and figure out this way. And then I realized there were people in the world who will help you navigate so you don't have to go full speed into that wall. Yes. And it blew my mind. And it just like recently, I was just like, oh, you're real. Like, this is your role in my life. Like, you know, like specifically when I got to like Walter Jones, I was like, you're telling me things like so I don't go down, because I was heading down this path. Yes, I was heading that. Yes, for sure, the best. Like, changed my life. Like, I had no idea. I was just like, you are the things I've heard about are like you, like about mentorship. David Gray is amazing as well. Once he got moved over to the New York office, I had someone like full time in my face who gives you real guidance and will sit you down and be like, and I'm the type of person, like, I ask a million questions anyways. So like when I found out there was like, and usually I was asking myself, and I was like, and then finally I got to a point where I was asking people who knew what they were doing. Right. And I was like, tell me what I'm supposed to do in this situation. Now, especially for me, publishing is brand new to me. Like I came from label, I started at label. I knew label very well. And like when I came over to publishing, I even asked like Walter and David, I asked them like 12 times, I'm like, are you sure? Like, you want me to come over to publishing? I was like, I really don't know anything about publishing. And Walter and David were like, it's fine. You'll learn on the job. I was like, okay, like, if you say so. So, and they have literally been like right there by me every step, like to the point where they were like because before David got over to New York, they were all in LA, and they would call me like every other day, and I'd be like, you guys call me a lot. Like, I didn't realize like they were people. They were like really like checking in and being like, are you good? Are you okay? Do you need anything? I was like, yeah, I think I'm okay. Like, you know, so, but then I was like, oh, this is normal. This is like what mentorship looks like. This is what sponsorship looks like. This is like people who believe in you and care about you in your career. So I said all that to say, like, I just came to that realization. Sorry, I didn't.
Good.
Jen? No. Yeah, like mentorship is so important. I've had, you know, mentorships. I've had male mentors and female mentors. Like Nicole has been a mentor of mine for years, and it's the most important thing. I have a way of like getting myself into trouble, into like crazy situations in this business where you're like, how did I end up here? Like, this person's mad and this person's bad and this record has a story and this, like crazy situations. And then so the people that, you know, your mentors are the people that you can call and learn how to navigate like difficult situations. And, you know, days where like there are days in this business where you're like, am I really supposed to be doing this? Is this really meant for me? Where you're like, you know, days where you come home and you're struggling and you're crying and you're like, you know, you working so hard to get things done and moving. And then also as a girl, you got to be kind of on point when you're doing it too. So like there's that extra pressure sometimes. And so, you know, being able to call someone like Nicole and saying like, yo, I don't know if I'm like, is this for me? Like today is rough. It's like, it's been a hard day, you know, and people that can kind of like walk you through those situations and those times and, you know, give you advice or even connect dots for you. Like a lot of doors can be open to you through your mentors as well. And, you know, coming from Atlanta, like I moved to LA from Atlanta. So I had been working in sort of like the trenches and the grind with like a lot of the entertainment camps and the artists. And, you know, those are situations that are a little less regulated in terms of like working for a corporation. And so, you know, my male mentor, Orlando, was like very helpful in like sort of keeping dudes away from me, you know, and like sort of protecting me and incubating me and like in that way. So mentors are essential, but you have to be willing to cultivate the relationship. People don't just wake up and want to be your mentor. You have to work at it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Mentorship has been, essential in my career so far. I've been extremely blessed to have someone every step of the way. Even from when I made the cold call in St. Louis to call Nelly's management company. I was a part of the uh, NCNW, the National Council of Negro Women. And because of that, this lady, Dana Randolph, who's basically like my aunt now, she basically adopted me at that point and became a strong mentor for me then and continues to be. Tony Davis, Nelly's former manager, same thing. Um, Grace Miguel, who I work with at Def Jam, same thing. Like always made sure I was good, made sure I had a job, made sure I was just okay, made sure I was going to the doctor. Ethiopia Habits to Miriam, like incredible, like talking me off the ledge every day, you know, making sure I don't go down the wrong path like Ari mentioned. I've been extremely blessed, and now I'm at Warner Chapel and I have Ryan Press. So I've been incredibly blessed to have people like really take me in without really having to ask, and it's really important. The other thing I was going to say, just as much as we have mentors, we also all have mentees, and I think it's really important that we give back to the community and make sure that while we're coming up, we're also bringing someone else up along the way.
That's right.
Totally agree. 100%.
Super important. It's like non-negotiable. Super important. Okay. I'm going to open it up for questions now. So I have so many more questions for you, but all right. So this question is from CHR Joubert. What is the process for pitching yourself as a writer to a publisher since they won't usually accept unsolicited material? How do you break in?
You got to be aggressive. A lot of times people will say, hey, I sent an email to so-and-so and they didn't respond to me, and that's the end all be all for them. You got to be continuously hitting people up, bugging them, stalking them to the point to where when you email them, they think that they have met you and they just forgot who you are and they email you back because of that. I know I've been guilty of that. Like someone will send you an email like, hey, Brandon, it's good talking to you. And I'm like, it's good talking to you too. But like, you just got to be aggressive and like whatever you want in life, you can't have a plan B. It's always plan A. You just got to go get it.
Absolutely. Okay, so this question is from Jillian Chamberlain. How do you balance being respected by the men and artists you work with versus them thinking you're a B for speaking your mind? Sadly, a common mix-up.
I think it's always like there's a balance. So, you can I believe you can tell someone almost anything as long as it's like tactful. So I think you have to, in the moments where there is like an imbalance, okay, maybe it's, this is going to sound really, really crazy, but, no one should be judged based on how they look. But like, let's just say you wear some heels to the studio and people looking at you like you're just one of the girls there for the artist, then you got to kind of like sharpen it a little bit with your polish. So you have to make sure that you're speaking professionally in that moment. So if there's an imbalance in a situation, you have to sort of tweak it to maintain that balance of the hard and the soft, where it's like, listen, I'm not here for that, but if you want to talk about business, like we can talk about business, but other than that, I have to run. Mm-hmm. So just managing that balance, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
Okay, this question is from Nathan Liu 517. From your experience, what do publishing companies best look for in up-and-coming music producers?
We're always looking for the next sound. When I was courting Pierre Bourne, I remember his sound being so distinctive that I was like, yo, this is crazy. And I remember just thinking, he was also an engineer at the time in Atlanta. And because he's an engineer, he's able to sharpen his skill set a little bit more. So I think it's important for producers to also take up on other skill sets, just to sharpen their craft and also to make sure that they're always studying and challenging themselves. So that was one of the things that like he stands out to me because I always remember like, yo, he's changing the sound of music.
Yeah, I agree with Brandra for sure. I think changing what the next sound is going to be. Also, like when I first got connected to Earl on the Beat, who's based in Atlanta as well. He did the act up for City Girls. He played us that record before it was even out. He's like, I have this record with the City Girls, and he played it, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a hit. Like I just knew instantly. Like there's something about the City Girls too. When every time they come on, you're just like, I don't know, I love this record. Like so when I heard it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a big record. So we kind of knew instantly, like even before knowing who he was, and he was a hustler. Like he was working. Like he was making sure, he was like, I don't care who knows me, who doesn't know me. I'm going to introduce myself. Like, this is who I am. So that was like, oh, that really caught my attention. I was like, okay, like he's ready to go. Like, so.
Good stuff. Okay, ladies, I think we only have like 2 more minutes. So I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to the up and coming songwriters, producers, and executives that are listening in right now?
Be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ari said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I had what I thought were setbacks at the time coming up, and when you know, hindsight is always 20/20, and so I became frustrated when I thought I should have been in a certain position many times, and I could have quit, and I didn't. And so, you get to a point where you want to be, and you're like, it's all worth it. It's always worth it. We all have different journeys, and I think a lot of times we get caught up in life being a trajectory that's going to be consistent, but it's not. It's exactly that. It's a journey, so you can have your highs and lows, and you just have to be mindful to be faithful and to also be patient along the way.
Absolutely.
For sure. I think it's also about.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll let you go. I'll go with that.
I would also say it's about, nothing beats the work, so fine tuning your craft, like really, really understanding, whatever it is you want to do, doing it to the best of your ability and then some, interning, volunteering, just learning everything you can about that particular role and starting to make connections and putting in that work, because that work is so invaluable to, becoming an executive, to becoming an assistant, to becoming, like entry level. I think you have to really, really know your craft and know what you're doing and make connections in that space.
Absolutely. Ari, how about you?
I hold on.
That's okay.
I think I would say to younger executives is really trust your process and definitely be a student of the game. There's so many tests and so many levels that you're going to go through. It's going to bring you to the brink. You feel like Brandra said, you feel like you should be here and you're not there. And so there's a lot of ups and downs, and it's literally like, just never give up. Just don't give up. That is like the whole, like I came to that conclusion like really early I was like, oh, the people who get to there are the people who just didn't stop no matter what got thrown at them. Like exactly. They just took it on the chin. Even if it was shit, they took it on the chin. And they kept moving forward.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just like, every time. So I saw that like it wasn't, so I saw that really early in my career. So I was just like, okay, as long as I don't stop, like no matter what, it doesn't matter what happens, like I will get to that place. So that would be my only.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you, ladies. This was amazing. Thank you for your time, Jen, Brandra, Ari. We appreciate, ASCAP appreciates you. I appreciate you. The three of you have accomplished such amazing things, and I know that this is just the beginning of long careers and, many, many hits, and I am here for all of it. I cannot wait. I am rooting for you from the sidelines, from the front lines, from the front, from the back, all of it. So thank you for spending just a little bit of your time here with us today. We appreciate you, and I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot too.